Hello and welcome to Hacking State. This is Alex Murshak. With me today is Rambo Van Halen. Rambo, welcome to the show.
Murshak, good to be here. Thanks
It's,
for having me.
it's so good to have you. So you came out with a little bit of a book some time ago with Passage Press um, about your life, your experiences in Hollywood, called Hollywood Samistat. The link for that will be in the description. It's through our friends over at Passage Press. And so I wanted to get you on to talk to you a little bit about, how the book came about, why you wrote the book, and maybe talk a little bit as well about the current state of Hollywood in particular, the film industry, maybe LA more generally. But let's just get started with where did this book come from?
It's a great question. I don't know. It just came. I just started writing. Uh, I, it started as a journaling project. Just a journaling exercise, and I just started kind of writing down. I think writing is the best way to sort your thoughts. And it was sort of, events and issues, about me sort of getting out of the film business. I was making a sort of a concerted effort to leave. Um, and so it was kind of my goodbye to the film industry in some ways. And what I think happened in retrospect, because when you're creating, you don't really know what you're doing. Things just kind of come out. But in retrospect, I think it was, it wasn't my departure from the film industry. It wasn't, it was sort of a I thought it was a love letter. But what it really was an obituary, right? Because this thing called that we call the film industry is dead. Now they're still making movies. That's not going to stop. They're still making TV shows. They're still making all sorts of content. Um, but this thing that I knew as the industry, which is a collection of business people and artisans and craftsmen and actors and creatives and writers and directors and all these people, that's kind of going away. And what's going to replace it, I'm not sure. I know they're still going to make movies, but this thing that was sort of based in Los Angeles, this industry, is kind of gone. I mean, just one. I keep getting little. I've been out of LA for many years now, even though I'm technically still working in the industry, but sort of at a distance. Um, but I get these little snippets that CBS Radford Studios is closing. Basically, they're going out of business, and all these studio lots, where all these TV, CBS Radford, believe they did Seinfeld there. I think they did Friends there. They did Gilligan's Island there. Um, and it's the land is worth more than the business. It's going to be a lot more lucrative to redevelop it into housing, unfortunately. And this is happening, all over Los Angeles. A lot of these wounds are self-inflicted, but a lot of it's sort of a changing media environment too, and it's just sort of a sad thing to see. So there
So,
you go.
okay. So the industry is dying, or the industry, at least as it once was, is dying. What are the contours of that? What is that like? What's the reality of that look like?
Well, filmmaking is this really labor-intensive process. It takes thousands of people to make a movie, right? A lot of them working with their hands, not just everybody working in computers. And then you have, whole administrative aspect to it, which is what I did. I was a producer, which is a fancy word for project manager, basically, the type of producing that I did. Um,
You were a line producer, correct?
I was a line producer. I did some executive producing, kind of by the end of my producing run. I actually gave it up. 6 years ago, I walked away from producing, and I've been sort of doing specialized crew work, is what I call it, outside of Los Angeles, um, which has been a lot of fun. But it's basically disappeared. The work just isn't there anymore. Um, so I mean, there's lots of reasons for this. One is a changing media landscape. The other is that there's sort of been this race to the bottom with content. Nobody wants to take a risk and make new great stuff. If you'll notice, everything playing the theaters is a sequel or remake of pre-existing IP. Nobody wants to produce pre-existing IP, or I'm sorry, that nobody wants to produce new IP because it's too risky, and nobody wants to lose their job, so they go with the same old crap. But people are sick of the same old crap,
You
so
know,
the audience has kind of been lost.
I had a conversation a little while ago with do you know the Kino Corner?
I am aware of that. Yes.
Yeah, so he came on a while ago, a long time ago, and we had a conversation about the state of the film industry at the time. And one of the things that came up was that the economics of the whole industry had sort of shifted as a result of the internet, really,
Right.
which is that it basically, and from his perspective, and we didn't do a hard economic analysis on this, but was that the the industry became a lot more risk averse. And so there used to be this like center of gravity, these sort of medium sized films, these sort of niche or cult films that would get made because there were certain studios and certain directors who were sort of catering to that group of people. And there was a niche for them as long as people were going to the cinema. But once that sort of disappeared, the only thing that was really left was like the big blockbuster movies or the like indie film circuit. That was at least something we discussed at the time. And it sounds very similar to what you're saying, where it's like, everyone knows about the meme about the blockbusters needing to just be everything is now just a sequel, just a derivative of something else.
Right.
And I think, I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think that that is just a result of the logic of the economics of the industry as it stands?
Yes and no. I mean, one funny thing about risk aversion is it kind of came in during the feminization of the film industry. The business that I came in was kind of this, I won't say it was a hyper masculine place, but it was a masculine place. There were a lot of women around, there were a lot of gay men around. But everybody kind of worked in this sort of masculine way. And during Me Too, that kind of shifted, where decisions were done by the team. You had to check in with the team. There was no single person who could make these decisions anymore. Everything got very legalistic. And when you get a group of women together, um, they're very risk averse, right? They don't like to take chances. This is sort of the domain of the man. And this started happening with Me Too, which I view as sort of a coup from the business corporate interests sort of taking over the creative interests. And the film industry is really funny, right? Because it's on one hand it's a mass market consumer product, right? But on the other hand, it's art. So there's this tension, and always has been this tension between sort of the corporate interests and the creative interests. And this has gone back and forth over the years. In the 1960s, things got very corporate, and then in the 70s, suddenly things got, the artist was in control, and this sort of blew up. There was a movie called Heaven's Gate that went so over budget that it bankrupted United Artists, because they just let this director run wild. And then back in the 80s, the corporate people were kind of in charge again. And then in the 90s, you had sort of New Line Cinema, and the Weinsteins, and they sort of put the artists back in charge. Despite their many flaws, and they were very flawed people, they looked out for the artist, and they knew how to make a good movie. Um, but what happened with Me Too? I would really say it was a coup. I mean, it was really a corporate coup at the heart of it. And they sort of gave all these people who had kind of been in the back office, the HR people, the marketing people, sort of an excuse to step into, roles that maybe they're not suited for, and making decisions that they shouldn't be making. And since then, movies have kind of sucked for the last decade. So
Um, yeah, no, continue.
no, no. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's part of the economics, and the internet's a big thing. Um, but there was sort of that shift in culture. I think changed things too. And another shift in culture was tech coming into the film industry, in the form of Netflix, Amazon, Apple. Because tech people love their metrics. They love that what do they call that? The KPI, the
Mhm.
key
Yeah.
performance indicator. That's the stuff they want. So when they're looking at a movie, they're like, okay, what are the indicators? What are the metrics? But art doesn't work like that, right? You can't apply metrics to it and try to get the result that you want. It doesn't work. It's a great recipe for just creating shit, which is sort of what's been happening.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, in some ways, it was kind of like the original slopification of everything came along before AI. Um,
Right.
and you know, I think the easy answer that a lot of people give today as to why the industry is changing the way it is, oh well, it's just a result of AI that's happening, right? But
That's part of it. That's sort of it. It's eating at the edges of the industry,
yeah,
and I think part of the reason I don't have much to do lately is because of AI. A lot of my income for the last 5 6 years has come from commercial production, right? And the Gen AI is not good enough to make a feature film, but it's good enough to make a TV commercial, and a huge chunk of commercial production is going that way.
yeah,
And it's kind of a shame because that was sort of the farm team. This is sort of where talent came from. And I can name so many great directors that started their careers, or actors too, who started their careers doing TV commercials. And that was sort of this way to build talent, and
yeah.
that's disappearing.
Well, it's interesting. There are actually a lot of parallels to the situation in tech. So, like, I work in tech, and tech is going through a similar set of problems, also kind of due to a similar set of causes. In the sense that it used to be this kind of, frankly, macho, Wild West kind of thing. People remember the early days of like the cyberpunks. There were all these sort of uh, mostly libertarian skewing kind of tech companies, which are the and tech bros, which are the early founders of a lot of the famous companies we all know about.
Right.
Um, and that was the subculture. The subculture was dominated by male nerds, basically. Um, and and it was more autistic. Yes, it was more autistic even than it is now. And um, it was concerned with making really good technology for first and foremost. And the principles of how that's done were were quite different. Now, this is a tech era that I'm describing that I've actually never lived in or been a part of. But the accounts by everyone, and I think the historical records indicate that the transition you just described in Hollywood of the kind of feminization and then kind of the good hearts lawification of the industry also happened in tech in the same way as you're describing to the film industry, which I think is very, very interesting. Uh,
Well, it's happening in all industries too. I mean, have you seen a sexy car lately? Like,
right, right.
right?
Well, there's this thing right now that's everything is sexy and nothing is erotic, which I think is a
Uh,
very interesting
I like that. I'm
cultural
stealing that.
commentary. Yeah,
Yeah.
because no one knows why. Everyone's like, well, everything's we're really sexually liberated as far as like images and movies and portrayal of sex and songs and everything else in the culture tells you that, oh, right now, like everything is super sexy. But the felt sense of the experience of consuming these aesthetic objects is actually that they're not erotic. And so everyone's like, what's confusing about it? Sort of like the um uh yeah, it's what is her name? That pop star who everyone says is like not has no sex appeal to men.
Oh, there's many. I
So
mean, there are many.
the one I'm thinking of is Sabrina Carpenter. So Sabrina is like brought up as an example of a famous pop star who's overly sexualized, and yet many men, myself included, don't regard her as a sex symbol. Like they don't. She's not regarded as an erotic figure, and so there's
Right.
almost like an uncanny valley effect where you're seeing all of the markers of something that should uh be recognized as like a libidinal object, but it's actually somehow missing all of the energy behind it for some reason.
No, I don't see many movies in the theater anymore, but I went to see the kids wanted to see that new Superman film. So fuck, I took them to the Superman film and wasted a ton of money. It was so horrible. But it was so funny because again, it was just like that. Like there's all these beautiful women in that show, and none of them are sexy. Like
Yeah.
none of them have sex appeal. Yet they're beautiful. It is an odd thing because it just isn't allowed, right? It's just not allowed in the halls of whatever corporate people made those decisions.
Right, right. So anyway, I think I got us a little bit off track, but I think that's an interesting kind of macro cultural development. And who knows exactly where it's coming from. But I think this point about the feminization of the industry is part of it. There's also this weird paradox where the reason the industry is becoming feminized is because it's getting taken over. It's because it's getting taken over by like women and gays and committees of people, right? It's getting like pushed through this like corporate lens. But at the
Right.
same time, it's the women are actually who are involved in this, and a similar situation happens in tech, are actually also becoming more masculinized. They act and behave and think more like men, which is the greatest irony of the whole thing.
Well, it's funny. I mean, you're coming up in the business. I mean, I had several mentors, and two of my very good ones were women, right? But you know, they were definitely women's women, but they could make decisions like a man. And that's kind of gone away. And a lot of gay men too, who were very gay and very openly gay. Yet, when it came time, they were in charge, and there was no like, oh, let's circle back with the team. I'll get back to you next week. It was like, no, we do this now. This is the right move. We make this deal. Um, so it's a funny thing. I mean, one of the funniest things is kind of watching the producers I work with now as a non-producer. Um, guys who, I used to have their job and they actually act effeminate. They act like they're gay, even though they're not. It's
Yeah.
kind of hilarious. And
Mhm.
like, the hand wavy, like, all the attributes of a gay man. And then once they leave work, they're totally straight. Whereas it used to be like the gay guys would act straight at work, and then once we're off the clock, they're freaking flaming,
Oh, they're
But
code switching as gays.
totally. Totally. But yeah, but now you have to switch to gay to be, so you don't scare the hose, I guess. You don't want the team, but you don't want to threaten the team of women because they'll the knives will be out for you at that point. And
Yeah.
that's not just in the film industry. That is in almost any business. It's kind of amazing.
So how much of this do you think is a part of like sort of a general decline in, I'll just call it meritocracy for lack of a better word. Now it's obviously like Hollywood was never totally or even primarily meritocratic necessarily. Um, there was a lot of nepotism. There was a lot of,
Sure.
uh, pay for play and other related behaviors. You talked about the Me Too movement. Well, the reason all of that happened was because a lot of people were finding, we're building their careers by, you know, nepotistic means through the industry, right? Um, but it does seem to me like the situation now is a lot more political, uh, in the sense that even not about pure talent. It's also not about nepotism. It's become this other almost procedural thing.
Right. Right. No, we have to get the person of color in that role. We have to get no, okay. I mean, so the meritocracy in the film industry is really interesting. The way I look at it, there's two worlds, right? So there's what we call above the line, and that's everybody who's a creative. It's basically anyone who's in for equity. So those are writers, directors, actors, some producers, the executive producers. Then there's everybody else, what we call the below the line. These are people who are just working for a day rate. Um, and a lot of these people are very highly paid, right? You can make if you're just a grip, you can do very well for yourself. But in the below the line world, it's very meritocratic. These are the people who actually have to get things done. And the industry that I came up in, nobody gave a shit who you were or where you came from. The only thing was if you could do the job and do it well and be invaluable to the people above you. That and as such, there's this giant patronage system that exists because you need to rely on the people below you, and the people on the bottom need to rely on the people at the top. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm a high school dropout, right? I dropped out of high school. I tried to go to college too. That didn't work out. So I dropped out of both high school and college. And nobody even cared. Nobody even asked me. They heard I was good at my job and I got on the set and did a good job. And there you go. I was able to move up. There was opportunity there. It's changed a little bit during, I guess really starting like 2018, 19, but it picked up in 2020 with Summer of Floyd. Um, Suddenly there was a push for diversity on set. And this is a funny thing because, nobody really cared who you were before then. So like if you were, I never once saw racial discrimination like on in hiring practices on a film set. It was always like, are you good or not? And there were a lot of yeah, there was a wonderful program in Los Angeles called Streetlights. There's a nonprofit. And what they would do is take at-risk youth. So they would take gang kids who were, Black and Hispanic and give them some classes about, set etiquette and how things work in the film industry. And then they would place them on film sets in internship positions, right? Uh, a lot of these kids washed out, they just weren't cut out for it. But a lot of them did great. Like they did really well and became like very highly paid technicians. Um, so it was this place where you didn't really need to bring in uh, you didn't need affirmative action, right? They started doing that in like 2019 to 2020. One spot where there was a lack of people of color was the camera department, which is kind of a pretty critical piece of the puzzle of all the hundreds of people who are on a film set. You have to have a camera because what's the point if your camera's not running? So they would bring in operators who just were not qualified. And it was a huge problem. And I knew all of my camera operator friends were just out of work because they'd all been replaced by women and men of color who were just not qualified to do the job. I was kind of out by that point. I was kind of out in a way. But yeah, I mean, huge cost overruns. Just, if somebody screws that up, it gets really expensive to fix it. You either have to reshoot or you have to fix it in post, whatever it is. So it's kind of this critical role. Um,
Yeah, the
I forget how
diversity
we got on this.
well, the diversity initiatives did do a whammy on a lot of industries, right? Where
Oh, absolutely.
wherever there was
Absolutely.
wherever there was heavy calling, often what it looked like was it would always creep in at the bottom of the hiring pipeline because it's easier to hire just refuse to hire certain kinds of new people, i.e., white men,
Right.
than it is to fire existing people that are useful and good. But what it actually looked like in practice was retiring all of all of the competent people and then replacing them with people who were, you know, perhaps they could get the job done eventually, but they were not chosen for pure competence reasons. And whenever you select for something that's that's a value other than doing the job well, you're necessarily sacrificing that to some extent. And so you
Oh,
get a differential
absolutely.
there. Yeah.
And it's a business decision too, because especially women will take jobs for less money than men will, right?
Oh, of
Um,
course. Yeah.
and so it's like, okay, but these people are cheaper. One, two, we look good. So yeah, it's sort of a no brainer for
And
management
we get to
until
feel
things go
good.
south.
We get to feel good about ourselves. That's
We get to feel good.
yeah. So uh how did we get on this topic? We were talking about kind of the changes in the industry that took place. It sounds like, you're a good bit older than me, so you would have been well into your career. Um and so this one second, I need to pause our interview.
Yeah.
Right. So we took a little bit of a smoke break, so to speak. Um, and we're back, and we were talking about the meritocratic sort of or non-meritocratic transformation of the industry, and how that ended up affecting things. So the place that the industry's at right now, do you think that it has chance of coming back? Do you think it's going to be more like that cycle you described before, where there's kind of the corporatization and then there's a return to the artists, or do you think that we're actually moving into a fundamentally new paradigm?
I think it's something brand new, and nobody really has any idea what it's going to look like. Between sort of losing the audience, between COVID, between the last writers and actors strike, um, the industry's kind of done. I mean, I know so many people who have just either taken early retirements or gotten out completely. A lot of these businesses have closed. I don't really know how it comes back to how it was before, and even then, a lot of the production that is happening overseas. So, as far as the American film industry, I don't know. I don't know really know what's left. And I think if it gets rebuilt, it's going to have to be rebuilt from the ground up. Like somebody's going to have to go out with a pile of money and take a lot of risk. And I don't know that there's anybody willing to do that. Um, so, yeah, I'm not optimistic. Sadly, I'm not optimistic that we're going to get a new golden age of Hollywood. I think it might be done. Unfortunately.
Okay, okay. And so does your book, the accounting of your time in the industry, your time in Hollywood, um, like you said in the beginning that you thought you were writing a memoir, but it turned out you were actually writing an obituary.
Right.
So in your view, this Hollywood industry that you knew is probably gone for good. Um, Do you see the industry changing in the sense of like, is it becoming more decentralized? Is it moving to other places outside of LA? Or is it just going away entirely?
Part of it's just going away entirely. I mean, there just isn't, you know, there's this battle for people's attention, right? I mean, just to back up, uh, another strange thing in our new digital world is that we're not making new celebrities, right?
Hmm.
We're not making new Brad Pitts or Tom Cruises because in today's day and age, you can't focus enough eyeballs in the same place at the same time to make a star like that, right? There's no more, it used to be if you wanted celebrity content, you had to turn on the TV and there was Access Hollywood and, all those trash shows where you could, you know, get the gossip or you could read Us Magazine. Um, and, and that was sort of used to sort of forge these celebrities to kind of, forge the stardom. We're not doing that anymore. And that's one of the draws. It's one of the ways you get a movie made. You have to have a celebrity, you get a script, then you have to get a celebrity attached, and then you can kind of get funding. But there aren't enough big celebrities to go around to get all the movies made anymore. There's what Brad Pitt's in his 60s. I think Tom Cruise is too. Uh, these guys are not going to be around for much longer. Now with AI, they might be around forever, but that's a whole other story altogether. But yeah, I mean, so like I Hollywood is traditionally driven by this star power and by this what I call the veneer of glamour around it. When you're on the inside looking out, there's no glamour. There's no glamour at all. When you're in a filthy soundstage at 4 in the morning, there's no glamour to that. It's just a lot of hard work. But we made it look nice for the public, and they liked that, and that's gone. It's only been deglamorized. We're not generating, that star machine. Um, so it's a weird thing. I don't know how that comes back. I don't know how we make something like that again. Now we're always going to be telling stories. That's not going away. We're going to figure out new ways to do that. Um, like streaming series, for example, right? That's sort of this, a new-ish medium. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't see anything returning to like what we had in like the 80s or 90s especially the golden age in the 30s and 40s. I don't think that's ever returning, unfortunately. Um, and one because it's so decentralized, right? So you don't have the stars. You also don't have the production hub. You don't need it anymore, really, because of technology. It used to be you had to do everything in a studio, and then the film stocks got a little better. It was easier to shoot on location. And then you didn't need film stock anymore with digital cinema. You can be anywhere in the world away from a film lab to get your stuff developed. Um, and what happened is, there only used to be so many people in the world who could actually make a good, high quality movie. And they were based for the most part in Los Angeles. There were some in New York, some smaller hubs around the world, like London, has always been great. But as these productions started leaving Los Angeles, the local crews got better. And now there's people everywhere who can make a pretty good movie. Um, so, and if you don't have to shoot in the US, labor is very expensive here. There's a lot of we have no idea as Americans how much regulation there is here,
Well,
unless you've done business in other countries.
plus the unions, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And and it's a complicated thing, right? So I left production and became crew. And basically left management, became labor, and I joined a union. And let me tell you, man, it was great. Being part of a union is awesome. But they're very expensive. And it's a funny thing too. Like if you want the best people in the American film industry, you have to hire union people, right? And if the way it works is if you hire a union actor, like one union actor, you have to bring in everyone else as part of the union. The unions, what makes them so expensive isn't the labor that's paid to the employee. It's that the unions in this country take care of health benefits and retirement benefits. So you have to make contributions to those benefit funds. So right now we're losing a lot of production to the United Kingdom, which has always been a great place to shoot. Uh, Labor there is very reasonable because you're not paying a lot of payroll taxes and you're not paying health contributions because the government takes care of that, right?
Right, right.
So it's just, even without there's a pretty good exchange rate right now. Even in years like when I shot there years ago, there was a terrible exchange rate, but it was still a bargain because we could get the best people and not have to pay their health benefits.
Right, right. And you're not paying American salaries either. So,
You're not paying
um,
American salaries, even though the salaries are kind of comparable in the UK.
yeah, yeah.
But it's all those things on top of it. So some unions you have to make between payroll taxes, between benefit contributions, it's 45% on top of what you're paying them. So if you're paying somebody 1,000 a day, you're paying another 450, 500 to the government and the unions.
Right, right. Okay, okay. So that definitely makes sense to me. Um, where so where is everyone going with this void? I mean, it does seem to me like we are. I actually want to back up before you answer that. It does seem to me that we are maybe ham-fistedly trying to create new celebrities. I mean, I'm a young millennial. I'm almost a Zoomer, and uh, my sense is like new celebrities appear or people that I should know about culturally, and I have no idea who they are until like much later. um,
Right.
so the one person that I'm thinking of when you say like, oh, no one's producing stars anymore, I'm like, well, what about Sydney Sweeney? like
Okay, so that's an exception, right? Everybody knows who Sydney Sweeney is.
yeah,
Because I mean, she's brilliant and her management is brilliant. I don't think she's a great actress, but she's great at publicity. Oh my God, she's so good. And she went against the current and was like, okay, here are my boobs. Here's my sexuality. Like
yeah.
I'm gonna push. I mean, they're already large. Let's just talk about Cindy Sweeney's boobs for a second. So they're already big. And my wife used to do wardrobe.
Yeah.
And and I'm like looking at some picture on the internet of Cindy Sweeney. Her boobs are just like up to her chin. And I'm like, honey, like, how do they do that? Oh, they use silicone cutlets. And she explained it. And I look on Amazon, you buy these things called silicone cutlets that basically push them up. And she shamelessly did that in the Me Too era when when actresses were not supposed to be sexy.
Right, right. They're supposed to have bald heads and look like emaciated, like little men, basically.
Yeah, they're supposed to have mustaches, and
Yeah.
she went the other way. There was some she did some event recently, and she was like in a see-through dress, and broke the internet with that. I don't know if you remember that. So she's like brilliant at doing stuff like that. And she's kind of fearless, uh, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm sexy. I'm not ashamed of it." Um, all these other actresses, they and their management were probably like, "Whoa, we got to tone it down, honey." Because a lot of these women are gorgeous. Like, remember that Snow White film that came out? Was it last year?
Um, I mean, I didn't see it, so I
I,
don't
I
really.
forget I forget the actress's name, but she was horribly miscast. They basically got a Latina Snow White, right?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And, and here's the thing: she's probably one of the most beautiful women in the world. And if she talked to you, you would probably fall over, right? I mean, God forbid she would actually like touch you and giggle at the same time. You would probably just like pass out and have a seizure.
Mm.
She's that beautiful, and that's really how beautiful these women are in person. You meet them. But they made her look so terrible for this movie. I couldn't fucking believe it. I mean, that's what I was outraged by. It's like, okay, not that she's a Latina Snow White. It's that they made this beautiful woman and made her look like a. I mean, I think they were going for a AOC look, like when the movie was like greenlit. Like, oh, AOC is really popular. What if Snow White was AOC? She was a
Yeah,
socialist. You know, she was into fairness. Um, anyway, so Sydney Sweeney, broke the mold with that, right? So yeah, she's kind of punched through, but man, I mean, very few others have. There are very few others that are household names like there used to be.
yeah, yeah. Oh, well, it does seem like like that's the current state of things. Like I literally, I'm so checked out from kind of the the monoculture, if there is a monoculture anymore.
Well, I don't think
Uh,
there is. I don't
yeah,
think there
yeah.
is.
That's
Yeah,
that's kind of the contention here. That like new people appear and I'm like, I don't know who that is. And there's like, if I go see a movie, it's because I think that movie might be really good or might be interesting or whatever. It's not because I care about anyone who's in the cast, um,
right.
basically at this point. Because you're right, all the A-listers are basically ancient. I mean, it's crazy to me to think that like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are 60. Like
Well, even most of the leading
in my
ladies.
mind, they're like perpetually like 35.
Oh, totally, totally. And even like the younger leading ladies right now who are like in their 30s and 40s, their stars were forged when they were child actors in the pre-social media era.
Right.
So, we're really just not making these people anymore. Um, and maybe the death of this entertainment industry, it's very tightly correlated to the death of the monoculture. I mean, this was the monoculture, right? This was our
Yeah.
collective imagination.
So the monocultures collapsed. Uh, I mean, one area where like there could be kind of like a backdoor workaround, which I think is happening, is through social media, right? Where Hollywood just says we're just going to outsource our star creation to YouTubers and TikTokers and people that are good on the social media platforms, and then some of those people end up vying for spots in the industry, right? In Hollywood. Because that's I think it's still understood to be a kind of greater level of fame than just being famous on social media, right? In the same way that like the Paul brothers needed to become boxers because it wasn't enough for them to be famous social media stars. They had to sort of prove themselves in this other arena where there's kind of just an absolute winner, and it's totally clear who that winner is. I think maybe that might be something that people are turning towards. I remember a few
Well, yeah,
years
it's
ago.
already happening. It's
Yeah.
happening.
Well, I remember a few years ago, like debating on where I was going to move to, and I was thinking about moving to Austin. I was thinking about moving to SF, and some people were arguing for LA. And the vibe at the time was basically everyone who wants to get famous on social media ends up in basically like LA, New York, or like Miami. And That's and then there would be like these houses, like hacker houses, basically of social media creative content creators
Yep.
who would be kind of trying to make it. And it was so funny to think that these content creators who had made it in their like hometown or whatever built up a large social media following, and then they're moving to LA because they want to like become for real famous. Um, so you know, are there any big names or notable examples you can think of people who made that transition from social media to like, I don't know what you would call it. I guess Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't I just don't pay attention anymore. Like you said,
Yeah.
like I just kind of don't pay attention to celebrity culture. I'll tell you this though, that if you want to get cast in something, even if it's a bit role, even if it's a very small part on like a TV show, you need to have a certain number of followers on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, to even be considered. Because the other issue is distribution. You have to get people to watch the show. And if somebody has 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers, 500,000 followers, that's 500,000 more eyeballs that might watch this thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of mandatory now that if you want to be an actor, you have to do that.
Right, right. You come with your own distribution channel already.
Exactly. Exactly.
So as a sort of veteran of the industry, what spicy things can you tell us from your time? We're now finally going to get into the juicy parts.
The juicy bits.
Yeah,
Man, most of it, like I still can't tell. I mean, I told some stories in the book that I'm a little ashamed of. That even though I don't name names, I'm like, if I could do it again, I probably wouldn't have written that. Um, the general vibe that often these actors, like the big ones, are really boring people. When you see them in person, I think spending a night in a hotel suite putting drugs up my nose with Oscar winners, probably the most boring night of my life, right? Um, and it's they're just not what you think they are. They're just kind of normal people, but they get in weird. It's a weird life, right? I mean, it attracts a weird type of person. This person who wants to be famous, and then they start being treated like a demigod
yeah,
where everybody thinks they're special. And I think this is a function of the medium of film, right? The way a movie will hypnotize an audience, and you see this giant face on the screen, you start to identify with them. And it's not something you can meet, right? It's not like a stage, like a play back in the day. You could go backstage and meet them, or maybe you knew them. Often, acting was not a prestigious thing for most of history. It was really, really a front for prostitution.
yeah, yeah. It
Uh,
was actually like the lowest thing you could be.
it was the
um,
lowest thing you could be,
yeah,
and you could go backstage and have a quickie with the leading lady, right? Uh, that was just part of the deal. The play was just advertisement for the real goods. It was almost like a stripper climbing the stripper pole. It was just advertising for what's going to happen upstairs in the champagne room.
hmm,
Um, but with cinema, that all changed because you couldn't meet these people anymore. They lived in a special place across the world, across the country. You would see little clips of them on newsreels, um, and they just and they were literally larger than life because you were watching them on this big screen. Um, so movie celebrity it was a different type of celebrity, and it's weird what it does to people, and some people are totally zen about it, and it just rolls off them, and they still remain great people. Some people become absolute monsters, and I witnessed a couple of assistant directors get fired because they looked at the lead actor in the eye. They looked him in the eye, and he
oh,
didn't like that, and he fired him right there, right then and there. Because they have that kind of power. Because the movie would not be happening without the celebrity, right?
right, right.
So they've got power over everything. And a lot of like really bad behavior, temper tantrums. Um, you know, Remember this one, I write about this in the book. This is the part I'm embarrassed about. This leading man and leading lady were having an affair, but doing it very publicly in their trailer and having like incredibly loud sex within the earshot of the crew.
Mm.
and everybody knew they were going at it. Um, and I write about this, and I'm a little embarrassed about it, but it's in the book. You can read it.
Yeah, and it
Um,
really happened. So
it really happened,
yeah, right.
unfortunately. And I know I don't name names. I'll never tell who they are. So don't ask. But it's it's a weird world, right? Things just have the rules of everyday life don't really apply when you're on a film set, mainly because of that power dynamic, and also the art demands it. The art demands you put everything into it, and they do. But I mean, here's a story. There was this. We're filming on this suburban street, and back in the day before CG stuff became cheap, um, if there were power lines will screw up your shot, right?
Mm.
So a film company would actually pay to have power lines buried in the neighborhood. If you were doing a shot in the neighborhood street, the power lines going to look good. Utility lines, you would pay to have them buried. So a couple months in advance, you'd come in and bury them all, right? So we're scouting this house. It's kind of a lower budget production, but there's this Oscar-winning director of photography, and he's like, looks really nice, but we got to bury those power lines. And, shoestring budget. We don't have millions of dollars to do this. And everybody just kind of laughs, right? Haha, good joke, right? We come back a couple weeks later to shoot, and the power lines are still up. And this guy freaks the fuck out. Really nice guy. But when somebody messes with his art, he doesn't like that because he lives for his art, and that's sort of what the industry demands, that you care about the art more than you care about your own life. So the producers talk him down about the power lines in the street, but there's one line going from the pole in the street into kind of the peak of this house, right?
Mm.
It's in his way, and he can't, like, frame around it, and he freaks out again. He gets a condor, which is like a man lift, and gets a pair of bolt cutters. And he gets up in the condor, and he's threatening, "I'm gonna fucking cut it, man!" And the whole crew's on the ground, like waving their arms, "Don't do it! It's a wire, don't do it!" But he was serious. Like, he would have cut that wire and possibly fried just so he could have that perfect shot. Um, and what happened is eventually the producers, like, they're like, "Okay, we will pay to have that one line removed. Please get down and don't die." We stopped production for a couple days and fixed it for him. But that's how much people care. And what happens is that it turns into some pretty stressful situations for everybody else. Trying to make the impossible possible.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you end up in this. I mean, honestly, it sounds a little romantic.
Well, it's
I
it's funnier.
I
There's a
think
great movie
yeah.
to watch. It's called Day for Night by
Mhm.
Truffaut. It's from the early '70s, and it's sort of the first movie about making movies. And he just nails it. He just nails the vibe. And it's a very funny film, but it's funny because it's happening to somebody else. Like, when it's happened to you, it's not that
Right.
funny.
Yeah,
So
it's
sorry, I
just
cut you off there.
no, no. I'm sure like you're like some grunt for back of lack of a better term on a film
No, that's
set,
that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
and you're just at the whims of these divas basically,
Yeah,
um,
correct.
who these above the line individuals. Um, And so and obviously with all the drugs and all the other stuff going on, I can't imagine that everyone is totally mentally stable all the time.
No, they're not at all.
And so you're sort of in this bizarro world where they write the rules. They're writing the law. I mean, it's literally like they are the law in that ecosystem, in that confined space.
Totally. And that kind of came to a head with me too. Like, a lot of this bad behavior came to light. And it didn't go well for these people. Like, and a lot of people dodged it too. That was the amazing thing. Like, I'll name a name, Tarantino, who
Yeah.
was somehow escaped with his career intact. I don't know how,
Well,
but he
yeah,
did.
I think, at a certain point, people are just willing to pay a certain price for genius, and they just kind of accept it as part of the deal. I think to some extent, actually, this is something that I think is true more broadly, which is that when you're selecting for these certain types of individuals, you just have to deal with like what I've called like high variance personalities. So you just get weirdos basically in
Yeah.
certain industries, in certain areas. The the whole like right wing media space is like this.
Yes, it
Where
is.
yeah, you get in there. Like I hail from the Midwest, which is where I spent basically my entire adult life until about uh 5 years ago. And the when I started getting involved in a lot of these scenes and meeting people and people I know from the internet and so forth, you start to realize like, oh, it's not just that I'm weird and that I'm weird because I'm interested in this stuff and I want to be part of these scenes and whatever else, but actually all the people here are weird in some way. And the
True.
result of that is that you end up encountering a lot of strange people who have very unusual idiosyncratic personalities, and that creates a lot of dysfunction. I'll just say on a social level. Um, and you know, there's good people too among them, and you sort of work your way through and you figure out who who's reliable, who's trustworthy, who's kind, who's not. It's like any other human endeavor. You have to like you vet people, and you also learn about who people actually are over time, and it's often not the way that they present themselves publicly.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm navigating the same thing. And yeah, it's like like you said, a lot of really great people that I'm meeting, and then you get people who are like, "Wow, you're really low functioning. Like, how the fuck did you even like? How do you feed yourself? You know?"
right, right. So where did you so you obviously made it through this. It sounds to me like you were relatively successful in terms of like you've created a life for yourself, you know, you've got a family, you know, you're still alive, you're not addicted to drugs as far as I'm aware.
Well, I used to be.
Yeah,
That's in the book too. But
yeah. But you're here. And so how did this all pan out for you? Where did you like I just want to try to understand what are some of the big kind of takeaways for your own life and w- how did this experience shape you and where do you think you're going next?
it's a good question. I'm trying to figure out next steps. I love writing. I wish it paid better. Wish it paid enough to pay the bills. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Um,
Go buy
I mean,
Hollywood Samistat, everyone.
yeah, I mean, I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household, kind of in a broken home. And I was sort of cast out in the world without a lot of guidance and a lot of opportunity, or sorry, I should say no opportunity. And this was the best thing I found in life, right? I mean, and what I tell people is like, you want to get in the film business, if you've got an opportunity to do anything else, if you can go to law school, go to law school, kid. If you can get in the tech world, get in the tech world. Don't do this. Because what it does, it attracts a lot of misfits that don't have anything else better going on, right? And again, I did well with it for many years. Um, but yeah, no, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have gone anywhere near it. I would have like gone to trade school, become a welder or a machinist or something. I think I would have been very happy doing that kind of work, honestly. Um, because again, from the outside looking in, there's all this glamour, like, oh, that looks fun, that looks exciting. And I mean, it's a certain percent, it is like every day's different. You're never doing the same thing 2 days in a row, usually. Um, and that's interesting to somebody like me who doesn't have a long attention attention span. Um, but no, it's kind of a horrible business. Like it really eats people alive. Like the amount of people who if you want to have a family and keep a marriage together, like good luck with that. The only reason I'm still married is that my wife quit when she got pregnant with our first one. If that didn't happen, we would not be married today. I can guarantee you.
Well,
Um,
that was a good move on her part.
Yeah, it was a good move on her part.
And
And
good
part
for
of that,
you for putting that together.
well, and that's it. I mean, we looked as so many of our friends did. You're living in Los Angeles. Like, do we both work full time so we can? Because the one thing about the film industry, people don't understand the hours are insane,
Mhm.
right? You're uh, you're working 16 hours a day, and when you're on a show, and the rest of the time you're sleeping, right? So you don't get to see other people. So if you've got kids, you basically have to pay someone else to raise your kids. So that was their choice. Like, do we both work full time so we can pay another salary to raise our kids, or does one of us quit and we leave Los Angeles? And that's what we did. Um, Now, naively enough, we left, gosh, I want to say, like 2011-ish. Naively enough, we moved to the Mountain States, and naively enough, I thought I could do something else with my life. Uh, but nobody wanted me because nobody could really understand what I did. It's kind of a black box to people on the outside. It's just so different. Um, so I ended up commuting to Los Angeles, for like 7, 8 years. I was on a plane, like Monday through Friday, I'd be down there, and
Wow.
do that like 3 weeks a month.
Yeah. So it
And
really, it was kind of a one way door then for you. Like once you're in, there's not really anywhere out. Right.
there really isn't. I mean, it's like I'd like to think my skill set is transferable to other. I mean, I one thing I'm looking at is sort of the event production industry. One, because I think it's AI proof.
Yeah.
Um, and two, it'd be a good use of my skill set. But yeah, man, it's rough. Like once you're in, there's really not a good lateral exit. A lot of people who do get out, the people I've known who've gotten out, basically had to start their own businesses. That's
Yeah.
really the only way they could leave. And the other problem, the issue is it pays really well. Like, I'm a high school dropout and I'm making, $250,000 a year. That's huge. Like, where else can I do that? So, it's a rough thing. Like, once you get in, it's kind of tough. And there's other little things you can do. I mean, I got more into, say, commercial production. I got away from the movies because it's just, it kind of breaks you after a while. You can't do that late in the life. And the people who do that for an entire career, they retire, they have no friends, they have no family, they've got nothing. And they might have a healthy retirement account, but there's more important things in life. So this you can do corporate videos, you can do commercials, but again, that's going away.
You
Um,
know, one thing that strikes me is something that we're kind of losing with this, and I think we've lost it already in other industries too, is it actually is important to have places for misfits to go where they
right.
could potentially build a life for themselves if the
Yep.
life that they were given, uh, what from birth was not something that they could sort of conform themselves into. And I think I get the sense like when I decided I was going to be in tech, that was part of the mythos that I bought into was that like, oh, well, this is a space that is at least mostly meritocratic still, and where you can kind of get in, and if you get some skills and you get some experience under your belt, like you can go and build a life for yourself without going through these traditional paths of like academia or college or whatever. Um, and what I found was that window of opportunities, especially post AI, seems to be basically closing. Um, where essentially there are no places for misfits to go anymore. I mean, I guess, or at least to go where they could make a good, gainful like life for themselves.
Right.
Um, I think that's happening basically at scale. I mean, I really don't know what other places still exist. I guess the restaurant industry, kind of the hospitality industry is kind of like this, where
Sure.
it's also kind of a refuge for misfits and weirdos and people whose lives were not like set up very well. But then but those don't usually uh, I- like in this widespread way, kind of turn into full careers for people, right? I remember there was this restaurant in my hometown that my stepdad used to like to go to, and one of the reasons he liked going there was that there was this waiter who he knew who he had known for like 20 years. This waiter who had worked at like lots of different restaurants around town, but was basically like a 50-year-old man who was still waiting tables.
Sure.
And this was his life. Like this is what his life had turned into. He had basically gotten into this when he was young, working at restaurants. And then that was the skill that he had, and he just kept finding ways to make it last. But I can't imagine that pathway, unless you get into really high end luxury places, is a reliable way to like be able to raise a family, for example.
Well, exactly. I've got a cousin who's about my age, and he's a bartender in New York. He moved to New York after college, and he's got a job as a bartender, and he's still doing it like 25 years later. I mean,
Yeah.
does okay for himself, but again, it's that lifestyle. You can't have a family, man. I mean, he works. He gets off work at 5 a.m. every day.
Yeah.
You can't have a family and do that. And he definitely can't buy a house in New York. Um, so yeah, no, it's a weird thing. I mean, I was, like, okay, Austin, Texas, right? It used to. I was when I met you, I guess a little over a week ago, at the time of this recording. Driving around with these Uber drivers, talking to them about how everything had changed, and it used to be this town where it was cheap to live there, and you could do weird things. You could be a musician and be an artist, and not make much money, and you could still survive. And that's not the case anymore. And there's not I think creative industries have always been that refuge, right? You could be that weirdo musician. You could do something. But any place that has a creative industry has gotten incredibly expensive. You just can't make it there anymore. It's a sad thing, man. And I've got these. My kids are entering high school now, and I'm thinking about what are they going to do? I mean, is
Yeah.
it worth it going to college? Like, what one of them probably will be, the other one definitely not. Um, honestly, I'm going to steer them towards the trades. Like, I think this is what you should do, guys. Like, you need to be a plumber, electrician, carpenter, something that's for now anyway, AI proof, until the robots come. But and it's a shitty thing, and I was damn lucky to find what I found, right? I mean, I was before I got in the film industry, I was kind of a ski bum construction worker. I would ski and you work at the ski resorts in the winter, and then frame houses in the summer. And that's how I got by. Making virtually nothing. I'm eating ramen noodles every day, living in a shitty apartment. But I had my own shitty apartment, and I had my own shitty car. And even today, that's not really possible for a lot of young people.
Yeah, I think yeah, I get the sense that that's basically going away for. I mean, what's weird about it is that in all these places, whether it's LA or Austin or New York, there is still this massive underclass of people who are serving everybody else that has the nice jobs, right?
Right.
Like they're driving your Uber, they're giving you your DoorDash, they're doing side gigs basically.
Yep.
And and those people manage to survive somehow, but I can't imagine that life is too great for a lot of them.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just, I mean, that's just kind of mere existence, right? You're not getting ahead,
Yeah.
nor will you get ahead. And it's sad, man. I mean, it's a sad thing. I mean, this just overall lack of opportunity. And I tell, I'm older millennial, young Gen X. I'm right at the cutoff, right? And I remember the '90s, when I was, got out of high school, or dropped out of high school, I should say, and tried to go to college. There was opportunity. You could just go do stuff. That's gone now.
That's
I mean, you
ironic
could,
because the meme right now is you can just do things, right? Like,
well, you can just do things. I mean, trying to get them to pay is another, is
yeah,
another question. Like, anyway, I mean, I just wrote a book. I'm like, I've never even considered writing a book. I'm going to write a book. I'm just going to do it. Um, but it's not. They tell me it's selling well. It's not enough to earn a living. Not even close, unfortunately.
yeah,
If it was selling, 20 times what it's selling, it's still not enough. So it's a sad thing. So yeah, no, we're slipping into this neo feudalism, and you just have to wonder, man, like what's going to happen when there's large segments of the society who are disaffected people. And I think that's what you see with these people protesting ICE. They're trying to give their lives meaning. because they can't find it anywhere else.
Yeah,
And it's a sad thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel that anxiety myself. Like, I'm not the most well set up at the moment, but like, I work at tech. I'm a software engineer by training, and my sense is that like whatever's going on with this cushy job that we have is like going away basically.
Yeah.
and
Yes,
and
it is.
the question is like, what are you going to become next? And that's, I think, on everybody's mind right now is like, okay, what can I go to that is actually solid, that isn't going to disappear in 6 months? Um, and I don't think anyone totally has the answer right now. Um, but it's interesting to reflect on that in light of your industry, because you're basically in a similar boat, um, albeit with, you've got kids, you've got a family, so you have to figure something out, right? And I think the entrepreneurship angle is all often like given to people. It's like, well, you can always just start your own business, and starting a business is hard. um,
Oh,
most
it's a lot of
business,
work. I mean,
yeah,
I've owned a couple. I've owned a
yeah,
couple of production companies.
yeah,
It is not easy.
yeah,
Um, and then you have to figure out something else that you won't be undercut by immigrant labor. Like if I wanted to go into the trades, like yeah,
yeah.
good luck with that. You've got to figure out something that's AI proof. You've got to deal with the regulatory state. It's kind of a pain, and there's no chance of success.
Yeah, there's no chance of success, and also, I just don't think everyone, you know, frankly, has the capacity to pull it off. Like,
No, they don't.
it's not it's not easy, it's not fun, and it's a lot of hard work, and the chances of failure, even if you do things well, are very, very high. That's been my experience with, all of my entrepreneurial endeavors is like, um if you like, you can make it if you play the game long enough, but you have to be able to play the game long enough, and that's really the thing you have to solve. Um,
Or it's the right game. Like, I mean,
yeah,
started a product. This is not in the book, but yeah, I started a production company. Um, kind of focused on sort of higher end production. Right when people decided they didn't want that anymore, they wanted the quote unquote real look. And the real look is very cheap to produce, and we couldn't do it cheap. I mean, I'm sorry, it's it's cheap. If you're like a guy who owns a video camera, that's a great business to be in. We couldn't do that. We couldn't scale down to that, and the business basically flopped because we just couldn't be competitive.
yeah, yeah. So it's this interesting tension where you have to like find uh you have to find like a high margin business model to work inside of, that also isn't like susceptible to these forces. What do you think is the so we have to talk about AI video because we it's just unavoidable at this point. And
Right.
I talked about it maybe a few years ago with Keynote Corner, and things were in a very different place, but everyone could sort of see this coming. I even, there was conversations even like a year ago about like, oh, well, this is going to be life changing for like for the culture war, right? Because, people are talking about it in terms of their ideological framing. And they're like, well, Hollywood has been co-opted by, woke media.
Zionists,
What?
the Zionists.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna.
Well, I wasn't going to
Yeah,
say that, but
yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Hollywood's
that's
been,
that's the discourse, though, isn't it? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So, but the idea was like, well, the reason we can't make good films, the reason we can't make the films that we want to make that have the messages that we care about is because it's controlled by this, by this cabal. And AI video is going to be an opportunity to introduce, like basically based film, based narratives, back into the mainstream. That you could kind of do this version of Samistat where because the production costs have collapsed in some for a certain kind of movie making, that AI would herald this like new age of creative production, and we'd actually get stuff that people wanted, because of the fact that you eliminate all these like gatekeepers and high capital costs.
Right.
Um, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I don't think it's really borne out yet
No,
as a
it's
reality.
not there yet. Um, it's not good enough yet. It's really wonky. It's really wonky to use. And like I said earlier, it's good enough to make a TV commercial. If you just want to make a few, short vignettes and cut it together into a 30, 60-second thing where there's no acting, no dialogue, you can do that today. And you can make a Pepsi commercial that way.
Yeah,
And that's happening. Taking money out of my kid's mouth. Taking food out of my kid's mouth, as the Teamsters will say when they're complaining about you, working too hard on set. Um, but no, it's not there yet. It will be very soon. But I think what we're going to see. It's going to take half as many people to make a movie probably in a year or 18 months, and then it's going to half again. And eventually you're going to be able to do it with a very small team. Now, I don't know how long it's going to be until you can do it all in the box. I don't know how you can, where you can just generate everything yourself. There's that oh gosh, that Will Stancil show on
yeah,
X. Have you
yeah,
seen that? I mean, and she's trying, God bless her. I can't watch it because there's so many technical errors and so many mistakes and so many weird AI artifacts. It just bugs me. But she's doing it. Um, and I mean, and that's kind of, from a creator standpoint, that's kind of encouraging. The issue is that I find with using Gen AI is that you can't direct it to get what you want very easily. I try to give it film direction. I try to talk to it like a director would, and it just doesn't get it. Right. Um, but some very smart people right now working on solving that, and that's going to happen very soon. And then there's I think the big open question. I was watching, I guess it was Matt Damon and that other guy on Rogan last week. Anyway, they were talking about AI filmmaking, saying how it's never gonna replace creatives, never gonna replace an actor or a writer or director. I think that's an open question. I don't I think that could happen, and I think if we can get a AI actor to give as good of a dramatic performance or comedic performance. I think comedy is the highest form of acting. It's all don't let me go down that rabbit hole. But if you can get a comedic performance out of an AI actor, it's over. I mean, it's over for real people. And then you can make it yourself, but then there's the question of, like, do you have the taste and the skills to actually create something that's worth watching? Um, just like YouTube, right? There's some very good channels, and there's a ton. I mean, would you say 99.5% of YouTube is, like, kind of unwatchable, or it's just the same old crap that everyone else makes. Um, so yeah, there's gonna be more content, but I think the question is how much of it is gonna be good and how much of it's gonna be watchable. But yeah, in a few years, yeah, you could probably make your own based movie if you wanted to,
yeah, yeah.
for
Well,
very little money.
yeah. I mean, that was one idea that people would were gunning for, but I think you're right that it is going to be if it does happen when it does happen. I don't think it's an if anymore. I think it's more of a when.
It's a
It will
win for sure.
it will be like small, very talented teams and probably people that already that they do have to have the taste. They do have to have skills. It's the same thing in software where people are predicting, oh, there's going to be a one person $1 billion company soon,
Right.
and there already are one person multi-million-dollar companies. Actually, most of them are companies that no one's ever heard of, but it's it's a matter then of like basically you have to assemble a core team of like really talented people who can get the funding, who can do the marketing, who can do the actual production itself, and have enough taste and enough sense of what it is that they're doing and how to sell it to people. Um, that you can do that, and those qualities are just hard to find, and because the crew becomes so small, even if they do manage to succeed, even if you do get a bunch of successes, the uh the the share of the wealth, the treasure that goes around is only going to a very small number of people. And so there's no like broad-based ecosystem of beneficiaries anymore. Actually, what's happening under that environment is a good amount of the money is being captured by the principal agents, the people involved in the endeavor, and then the rest of the money is getting paid out to tech companies that are providing all the tools.
Right. Right. No, I mean the small team thing. I mean, it's definitely where things are going in the film industry, right? Is you're gonna need very few people to do this. Um, and as far as like the creative process goes, I really wonder what they're going to be able to produce because it's funny, again, hundreds of people on a film set, right? You have dozens to hundreds. I mean, 50 people is kind of the minimum that you need to do even a small production. Um, but what happens during the course of production is that the different crew members kind of put in a little bit of input here and there. And a lot of these great ideas that we see in film it's kind of the result of like some grips like, what'd be really cool? And his boss is like, "Yeah, that would be really cool. Let me tell the director that would be really cool." And it happens, and it's really cool, And there's I don't think people really appreciate how much that happens. You have to sort of see it in action, and, it happens over the course of months, but, I mean, even me as a lowly figure, like, once in a while, I'll be like, "Hey, it'd be really cool," and it actually ended up in the movie. Um, so yeah, I kinda wonder, moving to smaller teams, if that, creative, kinda hum and vibe is still gonna be there. And that's a question I have. I'm not sure, I'm not sure if people find a way to overcome that or come up with something totally new. Um, sorry, I think my wife is coming home from lunch, walking into, the house. Um, but no, it's a wild world, and, of course, what's gonna happen eventually, and who knows how long this will take, is, the AI will just make it for you without even asking, and it's gonna be weird because, your movie is gonna be different than my movie, and,
Yeah,
we'll have no idea what we won't be able to discuss it.
right. The like you're gonna get like an fractal fragmentation of all media, basically, which is
Right.
kind of what we already have with our feeds. I mean, the universe that you see when you open YouTube is probably very different than the universe that I see. And on X, it's a little bit more similar because if you've got like a lot of overlapping, you know, networks, then it's the same. But I think that's right. I think that's where we're going to, where like everything is just going to be fragmented. Everyone's just living in their own individual world, and my world may occasionally talk to your world, but they largely don't know about each other.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, the thing about films, cinema, not as opposed to, streaming show or YouTube or any other kind of content, is that it's a communal thing.
Mhm.
Um, and one interesting thing I've noticed that I think commentary around film and the meta commentary, is exponentially larger than the actual thing. Like, the discussion around a film is or celebrities or whatever, like the Stranger Things finale, right? The discussion around that was way bigger than the actual show itself.
Right.
And so, is that going away too in this world that we can't discuss it anymore?
Yeah. Well, I think it is. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
basically it just becomes an individual experience, really,
Right.
um where everyone is receiving it through their phones or at best on their TV in their living room, maybe with their family. But increasingly, people don't have those either. So it'll just be
Well, it's being the chip in your brain. We know this,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
yeah.
It'll just be islands of individuals consuming media and their own like bespoke tastes and that what and you lose this common dialogue, common like uh, dialogue that you have between people where we can actually talk about the same things. I mean, that's already happened in some ways because if you're not consuming a lot of like normie media or sports or something like that, uh, you're kind of already siloed off. Like the only people that I really have interesting artistic intellectual conversations with or whatever these days are people that kind of are already consuming similar stuff to me, right? And
Right.
if I go talk to a normal person, they're asking me about, Emily in Paris or something. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I would
Yeah,
never
no,
watch it.
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't watched a streamer in over a year. I can't
right.
remember the last time I actually watched.
Yeah.
Um, no, Isaac Simpson, I don't know if you know who he is.
Isaac is a good friend,
There you go.
friend of the show. He's been on before.
Oh, very cool.
I actually
He said
watched
something.
I watched your interview with him, prior to this.
Oh, cool. Right on. Right on. No, he's great. But, he said something really interesting, that cinema might be going the way of opera, that we're maybe, past the era of cinema. And, opera had like a 150-year run, right? And that's kind of about where we are with movies. We're getting pretty close to that. And it's still around, opera's still around, but it's again, this used to be mass entertainment at some point. And now it's this, fancy thing where you put on a suit or a tuxedo and you watch it, and the only people who can put on an opera is the government, right? You can't there are no, independent for-profit opera companies that I know of, at least in the United States. Maybe somewhere else in the world that exists, but it's, the municipality or it's, some arts organization that's putting this thing on, and it's got some government subsidy to it, and that's really the only way you can do it, and that might be what films are, and I think we might be rapidly speed running into that. Where it's just sort of just this event, that, maybe you go to once a year for date night.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting that it would become this kind of state-sponsored, kind of artistic, almost historical thing,
Right.
um, because of the central role that the film industry has played since its inception in propaganda.
Totally.
Um, the whole history of Hollywood goes back to propaganda, and, the 1920s was around when the idea of propaganda came into being, and then later on, you've got, especially the post-war period, the 1950s, you've got, like, very direct government and intelligence involvement in the film industry, right?
Oh, starting in the war too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
of course, in the
absolutely.
war as well. But
Yep,
as a way to uh, to control the population essentially, and to influence people's views and to bring about cultural change and so on and so forth.
yep.
And in a way, what you're describing is that like that mechanism is basically also going to go away, right? Like when we talk about the monoculture, we're talking about some construct that's been created in order to affect people in a certain way.
I think it's already gone, and, no, you can make a movie. Oh, man, remember Philadelphia? It was, a movie about AIDS, right? It changed a lot of people's minds about AIDS. And you talk about all these other issue movies that had, huge effects. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I guess, in the 1960s about interracial dating, right? Um, you can use film to change people's minds. And I think, the political chaos that we see is a result of this death of, again, that monoculture, that could be controlled, and or at least guided, and people get all conspiratorial about the film industry. What the people in charge really want, what they're really motivated by is profit. They wanna make money.
Yeah.
And the filmmakers are motivated by making a film that people wanna see, right? And once in a while that, if you start preaching to people in a movie, they're just gonna be turned off, right? That's not the way to do it. So if there is a political point you wanna get across, you have to kinda sneak it in. And dozens of examples of this. Um, but no, I think again, I think this I got something else to say about this too, but this polarization that we see, I think that's a result of just sort of the death of media. And one more thing on the polarization. Somebody told me I met this woman, this is after I wrote the book, so I totally would have written about this. Had I met her, but she did development at a pretty high level starting in the late 80s. I think she quit around 9/11, right? Around 2001. So she was there making very big movies. In development, what they do is you get a script and you try to attach a director to it, and you try to find actors and you try to get the funding and get this thing off the ground. Um, and one of the reasons she quit is that they would have these great scripts and they would take it to the studios. And she was sort of from the middle of the country, right? She was sort of a Midwestern girl, middle American, and would sort of they had all these movies that would have appealed to ordinary people, right? kind of ordinary people in the middle of the country. Um, what the studio execs would do is look at their market research and say, "Nah, people really aren't interested in that. People want more gays and they want more blacks and stuff like this." But what was happening was that the studio execs throughout the 90s and throughout the probably for all time, but during her time, um, they were only doing market research in New York and LA.
Right, right.
And, it's not that they wanted to make liberal films, but what happened is, probably in 1985, the difference between a film audience in Los Angeles and Omaha, Nebraska probably wasn't that different, right? But, in the 90s, we had this polarization, which, I attribute to globalization. The coasts kind of won and the middle of the country lost, and
Yeah.
people drifted apart. And it raises all sorts of questions about feedback loops in media because they were making movies for the coast because that's what their data told them they needed to do. It's not that they wanted, or and they might have been, liberal leaning people, but they were looking at the numbers, right? Because they're good businessmen. I mean, or supposedly trying to do the best for their shareholders, and they screwed up, and they kept making progressively more and more liberal films, as half the country changed. So, and you have to wonder, did those films then make the coast even more liberal, which then filtered into the market research data, which then filtered into the movies? It's kinda scary to think about actually, that maybe, the result of our polarization or I'm sorry, maybe our polarization could have been mitigated if people were making movies for the middle of the country over the last 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard that thread before. And actually, I wish I could remember the post. But there was an old Twitter thread back when Twitter was still Twitter about how uh the Hollywood actors themselves actually back in the day, sort of the golden age of Hollywood, or maybe even the silver age, were were drawn from like the middle of the country.
Yeah,
And that over time, supposedly, now I don't know if this is true, but supposedly over time, they stopped being drawn from the middle of the country. For a long time, it was like you'd get kids rolling in from the Great Plains or from the Midwest or whatever, and they would end up in Hollywood, and then they would go on and become stars. I think James Dean was one of the examples given in this thread. He was
John
like
Wayne.
he was like some oil worker or something
Yep.
before. And now it's all basically other coastal elites and their scions, who,
Well, that nepotism came into play, right?
yeah.
As, and
Well,
it
and
meant
also
sort
who
of
can afford to live there, right? Like,
well, if you look at, like, a lot of the 80 like, Emilio Estevez and Sean Penn and, there's some others. They were all in the same class in Beverly Hills High School in the
yeah,
'70s, you know? They all grew up together in Beverly Hills because their parents were all in the industry, and that's how they got in,
right,
right?
right.
There's no bigger shit lib in Hollywood than Sean Penn. Um, and, and again, I think they started pushing out those Heartlanders. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's an interesting phenomenon. And I think you're right. I think it did contribute to the culture. It'd be interesting to see if the film industry does come back in some mutated form, whether you get more of a mix from the rest of the country or not. Um, that would be an interesting thing to watch out for.
Well, I think
Uh,
there's a huge market, right? I think there's a huge market for making movies for everybody else who doesn't live in, LA, New York, or San Francisco, or possibly Austin, right?
yeah,
Atlanta is a new production hub. Is that Southern influence in there? I don't know. Atlanta's kind of a big coastal city, in a lot of ways, even though it's in the South. So, I'm not sure. That would be interesting to see, though.
yeah, yeah. Well, and also like these places aren't grimy anymore. Like, I mean, they're grimy in a different way because you've got like fentanyl addicts like passing out on the streets, but like they're not grimy in the sense of like there's no this is my sense of it. My sense is that like LA and New York were a lot grimier in the 80s and 90s, and all of that has basically been like cleaned out. Like a lot of it, I think, has just been priced out, but also culturally, there's a lack of vitality. Really, going back to our earlier discussion
Right.
around sexuality and like the lack thereof, there's something weird going on where everything is just kind of sterile.
I saw that when I was in Austin. I mean, I hadn't been in Austin for like 15 years. I'm like, damn, this place changed. And it looks like everywhere else, you know? It
Yeah,
looks like everywhere else with those brand new luxury condos, and they'll have a community manager named Kennedy. And they're either named Kennedy or Madison. Welcome to our community. We have so much fun in our community. There's great brunch spots in the neighborhood, and it's all the fucking same.
yeah,
Um, it's a weird thing, and I don't know how we break out of that, man. I would love to see it. My hope, is that with these deportations, if we can get rid of, the 20 million people or so, 50 million maybe,
yeah. We
who
need to get
aren't
rid
supposed
of
to be here,
30
it
million people first.
and again, and I think, rents would come down in these big cities,
Yeah,
and that's gonna create room for weirdness, which is great. It's gonna create room for you, 'cause you can take a risk if your rent's cheap. You can do something you can start that band. Well, I mean, think about this, like, if you have a band, where do you practice, right?
right. You practice in the garage that you don't own because you live in
That
an
you don't
apartment.
own, and so or the warehouse that, your buddy's dad owned maybe let you use, that's gone too, that's been turned into a freaking a yoga studio, right?
Yeah,
So, and if you and back when I was a kid, back in my day, kids would start bands, and you can't do that anymore because you don't have a place to freaking rehearse, let alone a place to live where you can, make money off of, the door at some dive bar.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's so interesting. I had not even thought of that. But it's totally true, and especially with like the lack of family businesses, with just uh, sitting spaces and not even capital, but just uh, resources that are controlled at the family level that can be used for interesting and creative things. I think it's one of the consequences of like nobody owning anything anymore. You know?
Right, well, how do we get the equipment to the gig, right? Like,
Yeah,
"Oh, we can use my dad's carpet cleaning van,"
yeah, yeah.
and
Like
that's gone.
I'm
I
in
mean,
my
now
early
that carpet cleaning
30s.
company is owned by private equity, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, like, I'm in my also the all you're talking about sending your kids to the trades. Also, all the plumbing companies, all the electric like, um,
HVAC, yep.
yeah, yeah, all that's gotten eaten up by, private equity, but at least the unions keep them, uh, gainfully employed. Um, yeah, like, eh, I think about it the same way, like, I'm in my early 30s, I don't own anything. I basically own nothing, and a lot of my friends also own nothing. Um And that's just the norm. The norm is like, oh, people don't have cars, people don't have mortgages, like so everything becomes borrowed space or rented space or something like that, you know.
Right.
The emphasis on third spaces. It's like, well, third spaces are just compensation for not having your own space.
Well, yeah, again, yeah, coffee shop business booming because you want some place that's not your home, right, to hang out
Right.
in.
So, all right, Rambo, where I know that you don't know what you're doing next, but what are some threads that you want to pull on that you think might be interesting for the future?
That's a really good question. I mean, I need to be writing more. I've been feeling kind of uninspired lately. I have 2 half-finished books that I really need to buckle down and start working on. Um, and, it's I kinda know where I wanna be creatively, which is writing. Like, I don't wanna be making movies. People ask me all the time. I get dumb DMs like, "Hey, man, this would be a great script idea." I'm like, "I don't care. I really don't care about your movie idea. It's something I just don't care about." Not that it's not a good idea. I'm just not the guy. Um, no, I mean, I think, if I had to make a bet on the future of entertainment, it's anything live, anything in person, anything where it's actual bodies in a room together or in a space together. I think as the world gets more fake, there's gonna be that countercurrent of people who want that authenticity. The other weird thing is, I mean, as far as media goes, the only way you're gonna know if something's real is if you see it with your own eyes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
and that's coming, I think, faster than a lot of people realize, especially people who are, older than me. They just have no clue. So, I mean, what I would love to do is anything in that space. What exactly that is, what, live in person performance. Um, I would love to get, in person poetry readings going, for example. That would be wonderful. I don't know how I monetize that, but I think it'd be a great thing to do. Um,
Well, you know, you said some things about Austin earlier. One of the things that is nice about Austin is that at least among American cities, and I haven't been to New York since I was a kid, so I don't really know what's going on there. But um, there are still lots of places and lots of events where people are just like doing stuff.
yeah,
Like you
it's
could
good.
still go out any night of the week and find live comedy, live music. I know some people that put together poetry readings literally in town all the time. I'm not part of that scene, but like if you wanted it, you could definitely get it here. Um, I have a sense that it's probably less like that in LA now than maybe it used to be. And I have no idea what's going on in New York, but that's one
There's
thing.
interesting stuff happening in LA.
Yeah.
I'm not in LA anymore. I haven't been for many years. I mean, where I live out in the Mountain West, it's kind of small and people are kind of isolated.
Yeah.
And say what you will about Texas, you guys have culture, and it's a beautiful thing. To see people out and about.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
And rents are going down. So
That's great.
you might be able to afford to live here again soon. Uh,
Wonderful.
all right, Rambo. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you
Yeah,
so
man.
much for taking the time to come on the show. Everybody, please go buy Hollywood Samizdat. It's over at Passage Press, passage.press. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome.